Hey everybody, welcome to the Retro Futurist podcast. Today I'm joined by a very special friend and awesome guy, BDaddyK. We're going to get into some nitty gritty about one of our favorite classic sci-fi films from 1990, Total Recall, directed by Paul Verhoven, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's a movie that really captured action, but also had a great plot and messes with your mind a little bit if you start to overanalyze the film, and you can kind of go either way with it. I want to give a shout out to Ruminations Radio Network for hosting the Retro Futures podcast, and I want to welcome my guest here, BDaddyK. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. So that being said, let's get into Total Recall. Do you remember the first time you saw it or where you saw it?
Oh, I saw it in the movies. My my dad took me to see it, which was probably not a good thing, but totally not age appropriate. But my dad was a sci-fi geek, kind of like me, and Arnold. He loved Arnold just like I did, and do still. So we saw the preview for it, and it looked awesome. And I love Paul Verhoven. RoboCop was awesome. So just the previews for it looked awesome. So we went to see it, and I was hooked ever since. It's one of my favorite sci-fi movies.
Yeah, I think I saw it with my brother and my cousin, maybe even my mom and my aunt, because we might have all gone to see it together, and because my mom liked Arnold movies. My dad had recently left, and I just remember seeing the previews. I was like, that looks so cool. I got to see this movie. And then seeing the movie, at the time I was 13, 14. It was really fun, and I really enjoyed the action. I didn't quite understand the plot twist of the narrative till later. But one of the cool things for me anyway was that it made me remember, it was based on a Philip K. Dick story, and then I remembered Blade Runner was based on one. So it made me go back and watch Blade Runner, which I hadn't watched since I was much younger and couldn't understand. So it kind of took me back into the world of Philip K. Dick, which was cool because I felt like they did a good job of taking that story that the Total Recall is based on a Philip K. Dick short story called "We Buy It For You Wholesale."
I think it's free. We can remember a few wholesale, right?
We can remember it for you. Yeah. See, there we go. I can
need a
remember.
little Total Recall.
I need that jingle. Recall. Yeah, and they changed a little bit of the characters in the short story. He's kind of a Weasley kind of accountant guy. In the movie, he's Arnold, so he couldn't have been that.
Yeah, but he's basically same type of character, not Weasley, but everyday Joe,
kind of clueless. Yeah, everyday Joe.
Joe Sixpack working the jackhammer, or But that's one of the beauties about this movie to me is like you, when I first saw it, I saw it as an action film, because
right.
Arnold Schwarzenegger is action. He's the quintessential 80s action guy in all of his movies, whether it's like Total Recall, where it has you can see it on multiple layers, but they're all action movies, and that's what drew me in. It was like the action. It was awesome, for like a 12-year-old kid seeing stuff like that. You're like, oh my god, this movie's so good. But then when you watch it, when you get a little older, and after you read science fiction novels, especially Dick, and you start thinking about the plot, it's so good on a whole nother level. And especially for an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. I mean, because most of his movies just, commando, brainless.
Pretty straightforward.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The brainless action film. This one has a little brain to the brawn, which is nice.
So the plot, right? The plot of our film is the main character, Quaid, who's a construction worker, suddenly finds himself embroiled in espionage on Mars and unable to determine if his experiences are real or the result of memory implants. That's the truncated version of the plot. It went through 42 screenplay rewrites. This was crazy. When I went into some of the backstory, I picked up the new 4K re-release of this movie, recently remastered with Paul Verhoeven's supervision.
Ah,
So,
wa
like, all the color correction, everything is, like, to his liking. It's pretty cool. I got it on sale at Best Buy. It's a pretty nice, and there's a lot of extras, but they talk about this, the original screenplay was the same guys that did the screenplay for Alien. They had actually optioned this story way
yeah,
before
way back in the day.
Alien.
Well, like in this
Yeah,
this early
and they were
'70s or something like that?
shopping it around, and nobody wanted to do it, and, Dino De Laurentiis didn't think it was gonna be any good. He thought it was terrible. He kept telling one of the writers, "Ron, this movie's garbage, never gonna make it." Um, and then when De Laurentiis went bankrupt, I guess Arnold had read the screenplay and loved it, loved the idea. He bought it. He bought it and called the writer and said, "We're doing it." And Arnold knew from the beginning when he bought the screenplay, he wanted to get Verhoeven because he had seen RoboCop, and he said, "That's the guy to do this movie." So it's pretty crazy that it went through that many rewrites.
And it came out good, which is like the surprising thing. That long in gestation, that many rewrites, usually it's just
Usually it's a
flaming
mess,
flaming
right?
pile.
I guess it took them a while to figure out how to finish that 3rd act of the film. We'll get into a little bit more detail on that, and they also brought in, it was one of the last movies where everything was made in camera. There's only one computer effect in the film, and that's the security screen, where the X-ray
Yeah.
screen. Everything else was all practical effects, and, like, miniatures, matte paintings, optical prints, all that classic stuff that makes all of these 70s and 80s action sci-fi movies almost timeless because the in-camera effect just looks more believable
Oh,
to the human eye. Like, you might notice, like, "Oh, that's rubber," but the lighting looks better.
oh, the
Like,
lighting.
whereas the early CG stuff that was coming out in the '90s was like, "That looks
Oh,
totally
yeah, it's
fake."
terrible. That's one of the best. That's what makes this movie hold up so much, in my opinion, is the practical effects, especially with like Quado and like Benny's arm. They, like Quado, especially. You look at him, he it looks real. I mean, not
Yeah, I guess they were on the new 4K they talk about, there were production people on the set that swore that that was a real, Siamese twin freak and not the creation of special effects designer Rob Bottin, who also did John Carpenter's The Thing. He did all of that stuff for Total Recall. I mean, Arnold knew what he was doing, right, when he decided to do this. He's like, "I gotta get this director that can do this kind of." I think he saw what RoboCop was as far as it's action and it's very in your face, but it's also cerebral. And I think that's why he wanted to get Verhoeven. And then he's like, okay, well, with all these effects, we need Rob Bottin because he did the effects in RoboCop, but also the thing, you know?
yeah, that's
And
yeah, that's why I can watch this movie so many times and it still holds up. So I mean, some of the practical effects, like the painted skies and stuff, are and the green screens are a little sketchy now, but most of it looks really good. And I didn't get a chance to watch the 4K one, but uh, I'm definitely going to check it out because I want to see how it probably looks even better. I would think at this point.
it's super clean. It looks great. The only effect shot for me that still, like, the whole movie still holds up really well. The one effect shot that even at the time looked kind of hokey, and it's only because just matching a human frame to the special effect frame, and it's the shot where he's going to Mars and he's disguised as the large woman, and then they do, like, he pulls the ear and the face opens up and then there's, like, his head underneath, and it just looks kind of off because it's probably an animatronic
Yeah,
effect. That effect still, I never quite believed it back then, and it's still kind of not that good now. But that being said, all the other effects are great. The production design of the movie is really cool. I guess they shot it down in, Mexico to save money because of all the effect shots they were doing, but they found, the subway station and parts down there in Mexico City that have this, um, different architecture. They mentioned it. I should have wrote it down on the 4K Blu-ray. It has a specific architectural design
well, it fits in
that
with
really
it
fit.
fits with like the futuristic sci-fi dystopian motif, really. Like
Right.
the all like the
It's all, like, hard
yeah,
angles,
it's
and
like
it's all very concrete.
oppressive looking.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it looks awesome. Because I mean, maybe it's just the way like sci-fi is ingrained, like in your psyche now. But that's how I picture the future in a world like this. Is like everything is just bleak and strong and oppressive. Like the
Now, is that because we grew up watching all these
yes, of course,
movies?
yeah. But it totally fits the motif though. That's exactly it. But it just speaks to like how well they I guess maybe like understood what they were doing in making the movie.
Yeah. And a lot of that we can owe credit to, George Lucas when he did Star Wars because he didn't want it to look clean. He's like, "It's gotta look like a lived-in future. It can't look new." Like, a lot of the sci-fi movies pre-Star Wars, everything was weird, squeaky clean,
Well, I
and
think that's like that was like the sci-fi of the time because if you look back at the old like science fiction magazines and stuff like flying cars
yeah, yeah, yeah.
living forever, you think they made the future out to be this like pristine utopia, where
Utopia,
everything is like
right.
awesome and life is great. But then you had like the hard sci-fi where it was the total opposite of that. And if you look at where the world is going now, that's almost like where it's headed. If you think about it, it's not going to be, well, it could be living forever, but it's going to be at a cost, kind of like, like Blade Runner and stuff. You have like the ultra
Mhm.
wealthy that can live forever, but everybody else just lives in squalor and the world's run down and it's not such a happy place.
You just described
Yeah,
2020.
I know, right? It's crazy.
Alright, so the main part of the story, we'll get into this, a little bit more. Um, it's 2084. Construction worker Douglas Quaid is having dreams about Mars. He's married to a blonde woman, Lori, who's played by Sharon Stone. She's trying to dismiss. She's like, "Why do you keep having these dreams?" And she asks him, "Is the woman there?" In his dreams, he's with this brunette woman, played by Rachel Ticotin. So he talks to his buddy at work. He works construction, like you were bringing up. And he's obviously jacked, using a jackhammer.
Yeah,
Pretty, that's a pretty great reference there that he's doing. And his buddy says, "Oh, don't go, don't." He says, "I'm thinking about going to that recall place, and it's a place where you go on a trip, but it's a memory
those
implant."
brain butchers,
And that,
stay away from you.
yeah, his buddy says, "Don't do it, man. They'll get you. They'll mess you up. They fried my buddy's brain."
Harry. Harry.
Yeah, Harry. He goes there and talks to the sales guy, and the sales guy says, "Oh no, it's great." And the sales guy makes this really cool point, and he talks about what's the same about every vacation you've ever gone on. Like he's like, you go to different places, you do different things, but what's exactly the same? And Arnold's like, "I have no idea." Or Quaid's like, "I have no idea." He said, "You." He's like, "We can make you whatever you want." And at first he's dismissive of it, but when he sees the screen, there's a list of things he can be on. At the bottom of the list is secret agent. And that just boom, he's like, "Oh, yeah, make me a secret agent." At that point, they do the workup. He's gonna be put in the machine, and the techs are asking him questions about what he likes, and it's like one of the best parts when they're setting up what kind of females she likes. She's like, "Be honest, it'll make it better."
Brunette,
Slutty
athletic,
and
and
demure.
demure.
Yeah. Uh,
Uh,
and at that point, this is part of the point where you start to kind of wonder, is this the dream or is this happening? Because the image that they show is the image of the girl he meets. It's a spitting image of Melina, the girl that he had the dream about. But while they're setting him up for the implant, he freaks out, right? And he gets out and he says, "You blew my cover."
schizoid embolism.
Yeah. Yeah, and the doctor says he's having a schizoid embolism, and he escapes, and he gets in the crazy Johnny cab,
How did I get in here? The door opened. You got in.
and he got in.
Oh, I love that whole lot. Oh, it's so good. Yeah, that's like the part when you kind of start thinking, like you said, is this a dream or did this really happen? And then especially when the
Yeah.
doctor's like, he's like, "Don't be dumb. He's living out a secret agent fantasy," and she's like, "It can't happen. We haven't implanted it yet."
Right, and so that's the part where they there's 2 paths you can follow with the story, and that is the minute he went to recall, has that been a dream from there? Or did he go to recall? Did them initiating the process trigger something that made him remember who he really was. So you have like two. So there's some people that are hard lined that the whole thing's a dream. There's some people that are like hard lined that it's not a dream. I think you could make an argument for either if you follow the clues. I think Verhoeven left it open to
Oh, that he
interpretation. Really, I
definitely.
think if you're an optimistic action guy, you're going to go with no, that really
Yeah.
happened. If you're like a skeptic, you're probably going to say no, it was all a dream.
Yeah, there's a
Um,
couple like clues throughout the movie where it can really drive you either way, whether it's a dream
yeah,
or not.
yeah, and because there's a couple of the things are like all the coincidences that line it up. But then I'll get to that in a minute. I want to finish getting through this plot a little bit more of the detailed plot. So schizophrenicism, he gets out.
And he gets out and he meets up with Harry in
Oh
the
yeah,
subway.
and there's in the subway, and they're gonna try and get him, and then he fights all of them off easily.
Yeah,
That's one of the coolest scenes, and I remember seeing that scene in the theater, going, "Whoa," because it was
yeah.
gnarly, very, very, very
Oh yeah,
violent.
visceral. Shoots the
Yeah,
guys, breaks his neck. But yeah, that I love that part. And that guy Harry. All I can think of after I saw that was the Sega CD game Sewer Shark. Do you remember that game? He was like the bad.
I never.
He was a bad guy in that.
Oh, oh man.
That's all I could think of was Harry when I saw that, when I played that game. Shitty game. Shitty game. If you can even call it a game. But yeah, he meets up with Harry, dispatches him easily.
And then he's on the run, and this guy calls him and says, "Hey, here's the. You said if you ever disappeared to meet you with your stuff. Here it is." And the guy leaves this briefcase,
I like how it's so like
and he
convenient
opens
though.
it up.
Like after all the
Right.
shit goes down,
That's
the guy's
so.
like
Right, and
instantly,
that's
"Hey, you
that's
disappeared, but you've been gone for, according to his wife, 6 years. They've been married. Well, at the beginning, he's like, "How long are you married?" 6 years. Oh, out for a little hanky panky, huh? So I mean, if he's been gone for 6 years and the dude just finally tracks him down now, I mean,
well, maybe. So the one thing you can kind of explain about that is he has the
yeah,
tracker.
that
So so he gets a message, and the message is from himself, and he says, you need to remove this tracker, use this tool, and we get this classic Arnold scene where he has to shove this this metal claw thing up his nose, and he makes the typical
yeah,
Arnold noises while he pulls it out
gargantuan
with the
claw.
great
That thing
Rob,
was so huge.
yeah,
And then,
with the great Rob Bottin prosthetic
but even
effect.
that like looks awesome. It's, I mean,
It looks pretty good. That still
yeah,
holds up a little bit. You could tell it's
oh,
prosthetic, but
definitely.
it matches
But for the
really well.
time, it was awesome. I
Hmm.
mean, you look back on it now, like with our like high, with technology now, it looks a little cheesy, but it was
Right, and
awesome.
then his own message tells him to go to the, Hilton on Mars. There's a message there, um, so he does just that, and, he has to run because his ex/fake wife, Lori, his boyfriend, Richter, is chasing him because they need Quaid. Doesn't know it, but he is wanted by Cohagen because there's something in Quaid's mind that they want. And this is like I said, this is where that plot starts to veer off in like, is this part of the fantasy or did this really happen? Right? Quaid's wanted by Cohagen. He goes to the Hilton. He finds a note that says to visit Melina. It's like at a strip
Venus Town
club or
or
a,
Venusville.
Venus town. It's like a
Yeah,
whorehouse,
red light
basically,
district of
right?
Mars.
Yeah. He finds her, and there's definitely they know something about him that he doesn't know. And this is the cool part about it when you see it, even on multiple rewatches, the way they made his character interact, they did such a good job of him not knowing any of these people and the character expositions around him. You can read that they're unsure who he is now because they knew who he
Yeah, because like even
was.
when he shows up, Terry's like, "You got a lot of nerve showing your face around here," and he's like, "Look who's talking."
That's one of those
Oh,
Arnoldisms because that guy is he's got the
his face,
radiation
yeah.
effect of Mars, so he's all
Yeah.
creepy looking.
But yeah, that's what's great about this movie too. Is like most Arnold guys are characters are, so one dimensional, like just like a oak stump. He's like
Ex
just there.
right, ex-GI Special Forces guy who's tried to retire, and then they come after him, and he has to protect his daughter. Not that I just ruined the whole plot of Commando, but
Even if you did, that movie is
right,
so worth watching. It's such a terrible movie, but it's such a good watch. I but yeah, this in this movie, he actually has a little bit of, like, range to his character and his acting. It's not
right.
just the wooden Arnold in every other movie.
Yeah, so then at this point, he meets with Melina. She kind of sends him off, and then he gets captured,
Yeah,
right?
that's when the this is after,
Um,
like, she turns him away because she's unsure if he's Hauser or Quaid. He goes back to the hotel, and that's when he meets the
yeah,
chief scientist from Recall comes in, the one from the commercial at the beginning when he's in the
yeah,
subway.
and then and Laurie
Yep,
shows back up. That's right, and then he says,
he has the Matrix
uh
moment.
this is a
Yep,
dream, and you need to take this red pill so we can bring you back. If you don't take this red pill, your entire world is going to come crumbling down, and everything, all this is going to happen. He kind of lays out the rest of that guy tells him exactly what's going to happen for the rest of the movie. This is another one of those parts that's like, did it happen? Was it a dream? Because of the way he explains it. And then if you pay attention to everything that actually happens in the movie, it's everything that this doctor
exactly.
says, which is kind of kind of
But it
weird.
also it
And then
also has
that's
the one of the first clues to either side of the argument of if it's a dream or if it's really happening. When he
yeah,
looks at the doctor and this bead of sweat rolls down his face.
right. And so at that point, he sees the doctor's sweat, and he just pulls out his gun and shoots him.
Because to him, that's the
And then
validation that it's not a dream. That if it
right,
was a dream, the dude was just being projected there. He's not going to be sweating like he did. So he blasts him.
and then they run back to Last Resort.
Ah, that's when Melina comes in and saves him, though. And
Yeah,
that's one of the best
yeah.
lines. You can't shoot me, honey. We're married. Bro, consider it a
Consider
divorce.
that.
And then Melina's like,
Yeah,
then Melina's like, that was your
there's a good
wife?
4 or 5.
What a bitch.
Yeah.
uh,
They get back, and then Cohagen actually captures him. He comes in. He has this guy storm Last Resort, and he captures. Oh, and it's
Benny.
because of Benny, the cab
Yeah,
driver.
when they meet up with
Yeah,
Quado.
Benny's the sellout. They go to meet Quado, and it turns out even though Benny was a mutant, he was a sellout.
Yeah, then after they go back to the last resort because they said that Quado wants to meet with them, so they take the secret tunnels, go through the old the crypts of where the first
the ancient
the first
settlers,
Martian settlers were buried because they worked themselves to death for Cohagen, and then they meet with Quado, which is one of the coolest scenes in the movie, I think.
right? And Quado is like
Conjoined twin or something like that.
he's like a conjoined twin to
Yeah,
that guy.
oh, that's some pretty cool special effects.
Yeah, they did a good job. The lighting is pretty good. He's not too plasticky looking. He's not too rubber looking. He's not too slimy. He's just about yeah. It's hard to tell
Yeah,
if you.
and it looks to me it looks awesome. Like in seeing it back in the theater when I was
Oh
oh
yeah,
it
back
was awesome.
then, 30 years
Yeah,
ago.
that's why practical effects look so much better. Computer effects look good now, but like even um my son and I were watching some Star Wars movies the other night, and I told him to choose which one he wanted to watch, and he's like, and he starts making a case for all like the ones he wants to watch. I'm like, just choose one, bud. He's like, we like them all. He's like, well, I like some of the prequel ones just okay, but the special effects in them aren't that great. I'm like, aren't that great?
Yeah,
I'm like, why do you say that? He's like, because it's like it's too CGI. You can tell that it's not real. I said, exactly. And that's the problem when you use all computer special effects. Is it just doesn't come off real.
there's nothing
Exactly.
grounded.
That's why,
Yeah,
and that's why I think the special effects in this work so good.
I think that was one of the as a side note, as a little tangent, as we're on Total Recall, but a tangent into Star Wars. One of the things I think they did right with 7, 8, 9 is they switched to using a lot more practical and a
Oh,
hybrid
definitely.
of the effects. So it's a lot harder to tell. In George's defense, when he made episode 1 to 3, he was on like the cutting edge of new stuff. And I think it was like having a new toy. He
Oh,
really just
that
wanted to
was
play with that new
totally it.
toy.
Yeah.
Right. Um, so in this point in Total Recall, Quaid and Melina are brought to Cohagen, who's like this tycoon chairman who runs Mars. He's making all the money. He's basically represents the
Oh,
1%,
yeah.
right? And this movie is kind of like watching it just the other day. I was like, wow, this is kind of creepily relevant
Oh,
right
definitely.
now. Like,
Most definitely.
and that's the whole point of the RFC.
We know you've been scared watching horror movies by yourself. Well, now you don't have to. Hang out with Ruminations of Red Rum, all things horror from movies to the latest spooky games we've played. Come hang out. But hurry, the killer's behind you!
And Cohagen tells him, he says, I got a message from you. It's from you, but you're not going to like it. And it's from Quaid, but it's not Quaid, it's Hauser. And that's one of my favorite lines when Hauser goes, that's not you, that's me.
Buddy back.
And I want my buddy
Yeah,
back.
exactly.
But he did a good job of having a different his acting when he's Hauser is this total kind
It's
of
like, yeah,
slime
corporate
ball,
slime ball piece of
like
crap.
corporate slime ball. And when he's Quaid, he's kind of this clueless
Joe Sixpack. Like,
Joe Sixpack, but also but a
yeah,
badass.
but I
Yeah,
mean, that's like that's the
he
Hauser
actually
coming through.
he probably has more acting range in this movie than anything else
Oh,
he's ever
definitely.
done. I'm trying to think. I think the only other movie I think he might have more acting range in is True
Yeah.
Lies. So it's really cool to see. I mean, obviously Arnold was not hired originally for his
No, not at
acting
all.
abilities in the movie business. He was hired because he was a fantastic looking bodybuilder and he could play a Sumerian barbarian, right?
Yeah, this
Um,
exactly the two it's two totally different characters. And it's not like, just Arnold playing a different Arnold in that scene. It's like you can tell like Hauser is cold, calculating, corporate-y scumbag dick from like just
yeah.
his appearance on the how he looks and how he talks. And then you have Quaid, who's just, like you said, the clueless dude. And that's what I like about this movie too. Is that gives him a little range. But this also has
Yeah.
another scene in this part, which makes me think you could, to me, is another piece in the is it a dream or is it real? Because in this part, when they after Hauser tells me he wants his body back, and then Cohagen says they're gonna reimplant Hauser's memory into Quaid, and then they're gonna make Melina into like the subservient wife.
Mhm.
They put him into the mind
The
the
recall
recall
machines
machines.
over those.
If you notice when he goes to recall and they fire the machine up, the back part of the machine. I don't know if this is like a production gaffe or if it's intentional to leave it open ended, but when he first goes to recall in the beginning of the movie, when they fire up the machine, the circuit boards and stuff behind the machine are all the lights are blinking and glowing and stuff. But when they fire up the machines in Cohagen's, none of that stuff is going. It's all blank
Hmm.
back there. And I didn't notice that until like a couple times ago when I watched it, and I was like,
I don't think I've ever noticed that, so that's something that I'm going to look
because it's
at
like,
now.
because if it's just a dream, then those things aren't really going. So it's just one of those things that reinforces like the viewpoint of it's a dream or it's not a dream. I don't know. That was one thing I noticed. Like I said a couple times ago, I just noticed it for some reason. I was like, huh, the lights and the circuit boards and stuff on top of the recall machines aren't lit up and they're not working. Yeah.
Aren't going. Oh, but one of the things we both forgot to mention is when Quaid meets Quado, it's so that Quado can look into
Oh, that's
Quaid's
right.
mind because he's a
Yep.
psychic to figure out what is Cohagen hiding in Quaid's mind. Why does everybody want to kill this guy? What's hiding in his mind? And when Quado looks in there, he sees this old ancient alien tech that's underneath the planet Mars. And right now Cohagen is running Mars with an iron fist because he controls the entire economy because he controls the air on the planet, and he's charging people for air, and he's making money off of this, and he doesn't give two craps if they're living or dying because he's making money. And what's in Quaid's mind that Quado finds is there's a ancient alien. I'm going to say it, ancient aliens, ancient alien tech that looks like some sort of environmental evaporator that melts the internal core of Mars, which is ice, to produce oxygen. When Quaid and Melina are captured by Cohagen, he tells Melina, he's like, we gotta get out of here and turn on the machine. And so when they're at that point and they're Cohagen's going to implant them, and this is the typical, like, this is such a like a bad guys are going to win plot mistake movies 101. The bad guys are like, oh, we got them now, they'll be fine, and they walk away. And
Yeah.
of course the good guys always figure out a way to get out, and in Arnold's case it's always the most violent and
Yeah.
an amazing way when he pulls his
Ah.
arm out and then he pulls the pin
He's-
out of that cuff sleeve and he jabs the guy's jugular with that
it was
pin.
awesome. And then and then the dude pulls the like the fire axe off the wall, and the other guy has, it's like a rod of some sort. I couldn't exactly make it out.
Oh, and he sticks it through his neck.
Yeah, right through his whole head. It's
Yeah.
couldn't just like hit him with it. Like, it slices right through his skull.
Yeah, and then this gets to one of my favorite action set pieces in the movie. Him and Melina get out, and they're gonna go turn on the generator, and he has his watch that can make a hologram of himself. And as they're going to turn on the generator, him and Melina, Cohagen's men, including Richter, are going and chasing him. Well, I gotta segue back just a little bit because earlier Cohagen says, he tells the doctors, hey, tell him that there's going to be a party at my house later when he comes back as Hauser. And they're like, okay. So anyway, because we're going to get to this part, so Richter's chasing Quaid and Melina, and they use that cool hologram device to, he makes a hologram, the soldiers think it's him, they go to shoot the hologram, he shoots them, and then he gives it to Melina, and she does a similar thing, and then she gives it back to him. They're throwing it back and forth to each other while they're taking out all these soldiers. My favorite part, though, is when he's like,
Real
you think
Quaid?
that's the real Quaid?
It is.
And then it is. Yeah, that's another one of those great, like, only Arnold can pull that off, and it's cheesy, but somehow it works.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And then later, finally, Richter comes after him, and
They fight.
Richter's
Elevator,
they're fighting on the
yeah.
elevator, and he knocks him down. Yeah, and Richter's hanging down, and as the elevator comes up, it rips his arms off, and then he throws Richter's hands that were still attached off the side, and he says, I'll see you at the party, Richter. Oh, and such an Arnold
big time.
passion. And then they confront Cohagen, and
Yeah, Cohagen makes he tries to tell him
he
tries
blows
to tell him that they can't turn it on because it'll cause a chain reaction that'll destroy Mars.
the planet or whatever, right? And then Cohagen has a bomb, and Quaid throws it, but when he throws the bomb, it causes a break in the glass shield, right? And then Cohagen gets sucked outside, and that causes a vacuum. Quaid, being Arnold, is strong enough to pull himself up to the device that has like an alien handprint and put his own hand on
Which
there.
is basically like a modified Spock. symbol.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, the first
It's like it's three
the
or
first
something.
first and middle finger are kind of together. Yeah. He activates the machine and it turns on those coil rods and they come down, but not before him and Melina get sucked out into Mars. And that's where we have another one of those cool Rob Bottin effects because they're outside in a vacuum with no air and their faces are like bulging.
Eyes shoot out.
Cohagen wasn't so
No.
lucky. He went out there and he was out there so long his face popped. But so they're out there for a little while, but then the air starts to work.
Yeah, because they
And
turn the machine on and the rods heat up. The giant that machine was so ginormous. I know they were under like Pyramid Mountain there, but when they were first on the bottom, when they were using that holographic watch and they were fighting the Cohagen's men, like the sweeping shots they used, the place was so huge. And then they go up, and like those rods were huge. So like, you know, they turned them on and it melted all the ice like instantaneously, and it creates like the atmosphere.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
oxygen. Mhm. One of the cool tidbits that's on the 4K disc is they talk about the production design for that device and how they wanted it to look, and they were having a hard time figuring some stuff out. And they had a bunch of like Art Deco design work from the 30s, and there was these buildings, and they were throwing stuff around on the floor looking for something, and one of the production designers threw it on the floor, and it landed upside down. And Verhoeven looked at it. He said, "That's it." And he said, "What?" He's like, "That's it." And so if you look at that shot, those that device as it hangs down in there looks like upside down 1930s Art Deco
Yeah.
skyscrapers. Like now that I saw that, I was like, "Oh,
Yeah,
trip
totally.
out!" But it totally worked for that effect, making it
It almost reminded me of
um
some of like the aesthetics from the Alien franchise.
yeah. I'm sure that was an influence too, for sure. I mean, Aliens were both out by then. This was before Alien 3, so which is fine because we don't talk about Alien 3
Wait,
or any of those other
there's an
Alien
Alien
movies.
3?
Right? And so this is another part where, they give you that kind of little uh, twist that, was it real or was it a dream? He says, "This is how it happened in the dream. I might wake up," and then Melina says, "Well, kiss me before you wake up." And then instead of fading to black, it like fades to white, and it plays like this little ring jingle that sounds sort of like the Recall commercial that was earlier in the
Yeah.
movie. And then it goes to
Yeah,
black.
and Melina
Um,
he says to Melina, he's like, "What if this?" He's like, "I was just thinking, what if this is all a dream?" And she's like, "Kiss me before you wake
yeah,
up."
and she says, "Then kiss me before you wake up."
And then they
Yeah.
kiss, and it like has the white fade out and then the black. So yeah, that's
But it plays a little Recall jingle in the score. If
yeah,
you listen to it, Jerry Gold snuck that in there, and it's one of those things where it's like, "Oh, what just happened?" Um, yeah, so it's a really, really fun movie and story. What's like your standout moments of the film? What do you really love about the movie?
I just love the whole thing. I love the fact that you can watch it as like a pure action movie, or you can watch it as like a kind of cerebral sci-fi movie. And the action just works so well in it. The pacing in the movie is good. Um, like the special effects are great, and just the action. I love all like not to sound like a psycho or anything, but the fight scenes, they're awesome. They're so visceral. It's like it's like basically like another RoboCop, because that movie was like ultra violent too. And
Yeah, I think that's a
oh
Verhoeven
yeah,
thing. It's
exactly. But there's just so many good parts. The whole part when he gets in the Johnny cab, I love that whole exchange.
Welcome to Johnny Cab.
And go
Go.
drive. Sorry.
I
Yeah,
need a
sorry. I did not
destination.
understand the destination. Drive.
Shit.
shit. And he rips him off. He's doing donuts. I love the fact too that Richter and his goon there with the glasses, I can't remember his name is, they just open fire in the crowds when they're going up the escalator. And the first
Yeah.
that guy with the meat as the meat shield, oh my gosh, he just gets annihilated. And they throws the dead body down onto Richter and his buddy and runs off. Yeah, there's just so many good I don't know, there's so many good parts in that movie. The part the part in the when he gets captured by Cohagen though is awesome, and he rips the arm restraint off and it still has that bolt on the bottom. He
Yeah.
stabs it right in
Stabs
the
that guy
neck.
in the jugular.
Oh, that's one of my favorite scenes. And then Benny, he was pretty cool too. Like we're in the catacombs, they're like, "Who's he?" "Oh, don't worry, I'm one of you." And he pulls his arm off, and he's got the mutated arm.
We forgot to touch on like one of the most memorable lines in the movie is when they're at
"You make me wish I had 3 hands."
three hand. Yeah. Yeah,
The
the hooker with the
yeah.
three boobs.
"What, you don't like what you see? Earth scum." When Quaid first turns her down. But yeah, the scene with Benny too at the end there, after they escape and they're run into the mines, Yeah, well, to the reactor, and they round the corner, and it's a dead end, and Quaid's like dumbfounded that it doesn't lead to the reactor, and then Benny fires up the mining machine. That part was
Yeah.
pretty cool. And he, of course, classic Arnold line. He's like, has got the giant drill. He drills through the side of the mining cart into Benny's operator cabin. He's like, "Screw you, Benny!"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Classic. Yeah, the action definitely. One of the things that's pointed out for the dream ending is when he goes to recall, the salesman is basically describing the entire rest
But
of the plot of the
that's the
movie,
thing is, yeah,
right? It's all set up right
exactly.
there.
It's
Uh,
he's like, "I'm not interested in anything," and he looks and he's like, let me indulge you. Play you could be a millionaire, sports athlete, and he's like, that one, secret agent. He's like, oh boy, I've got the one for you. He's like, you're deep undercover. Uh, people are out to kill you. And then he's like, go on. And he's like, I don't want a record for you, but rest assured, by the end of the vacation, you kill the bad guys, you get the girl, and you save
girl,
Mars.
and you say,
That's the whole
yeah,
movie right there.
right. There's a couple others that are interesting too. There's one part where Cohagen is telling him when he's quit, he says, "You're nothing, you're nobody,
It's a
just a
dream.
stupid dream. We made you
Yeah,
up." And so that's like a part in now, if that's the dream, that's inside the dream, and we're in like
I was
Inception
just gonna say
layers
Inception.
of
Layer,
right?
level like layer upon layer upon layer.
And I think you could kind of go again, you could kind of go either way with that. And again, that's one of the great things I think that makes that movie stand out is that it makes you think a lot more than a standard 80s 90s sci-fi
Le-
movie, especially in Arnold. Most Arnold movies, like we were talking about earlier, they're all the plot's all pretty
exactly.
straightforward.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the things I love about the movie is I love how it's open ended, and I love how there's no set. There's no definition of if it's a dream or isn't a dream. You can think about it, and it's definitely something that's never been in an Arnold movie up to that time.
Yeah, and even I think the only other one that kind of explores the theme sort of like this, and I actually need to rewatch it again. I'd love to maybe talk about it on the show. Was the 6th Day
That was
that has a very
similar. Yeah,
sort of crazy plot too.
yeah. That actually wasn't too bad. That's what I don't know. That was towards the tail end of Arnie's like,
The good
yeah,
Arnold. Yeah, I remember I enjoyed it. Like I said, it's been a long time, so I'll have to watch it again. Um, now, so at this time, 30 years ago, us being gamers, there's only one. I think there were two, but there's one that I remember, Total Recall game, and it was for the NES, and it was published by
oh,
Acclaim, who weren't exactly like the best game developers at the time. I never got the chance to play it, but you
oh my
did.
gosh,
So I want you to talk
that
to
was
me
so
about
terrible.
Total Recall, the NES
Oh my
game.
gosh, it was so terrible. Um, like I said, one of my best friends and I, we watched Total Recall so many times when we were kids, and then when when it uh when it came out in VHS, we bought it and we watched the crap out of it. And it just so happened for the Christmas that the game came out, he got it for the NES, and we were so psyched. And then we played it, and it was so terrible. But this, I couldn't believe we played the shit out of that game. It it was the worst. It was side scrolling, and it was the worst thing about it is it was so hard. I think we could only make it maybe to like I want to say the second or third level, because being like 10 years old, and a lot of like the early Nintendo games were so tough, and the controls in it were so terrible. The graphic I can remember being somewhat decent, but it starts out and you're in an alley, and it starts out after, I believe, after you get the you put the towel on your head, so you don't get yeah,
Tracked by
muffles the
Richter.
tracking. So you're
Mhm.
trying to run away from Richter, and you're in an alley, and you fight off goons, but there's also cats for some reason, I don't know what, that jump on your head and scratch your head. So, and you
All
fight
right.
hobos, which have nothing to do with it's. I want to say it's like very loosely based on the movie because
Right.
you fight your way through the alley, you fight the hobos, and then you get in the car chase. You get in the Johnny cab, and you have to navigate through the streets of whatever the city is in Total Recall, and Richter's chasing you, and it gets progressively harder because the streets get more skinnier, and they more winding, and it's so hard. And I don't think we've really made it much past that level because it was just insanely hard. And when you fight the in the alleyway, you can get your power restored by, I believe it's soda cans. So so you pick up soda to get your power back, but the controls are so terrible. It's almost impossible to make it through this alleyway without losing most of your lives. And the hobos, they have guns, and I, it's a flaming pile of turd, put it that way. But we played it, and we played it a lot. I remember that in the Karate Kid video game we played the crap out of on the NES when we were that age. But because
That's funny. There's a review from Awful Video Games, the Total Recall game review. It says, "I finally tackled one of the most talked about bad
oh
NES games out there. An insult to the quality movie it's based on. This game
yeah,
sucks."
that's totally it. And we were so psyched to get it. And even though it sucked so bad, we played it. It was just one of those games that we
Yeah.
wanted to see what was next. And I believe after the car chase level, you were in the ruins of that old construction site where we drive the Johnny cab to, and Richter and his buddy track you to, and he takes a
The subway station area or
yeah,
whatever.
and you have to fight his goons in that level. But we could never make it much further than that because it was incredibly frustrating. Like that was like a controller thrower. It was so bad.
Yeah, I never played it. It was one of those things where as a kid you could kind of like certain logos, like you knew if you booted up a Nintendo game and it had the Konami logo, it was probably gonna be
Yeah,
pretty
or
good. Or if it was made by
Capcom,
Nintendo, it was probably gonna be pretty good. Or Capcom was gonna be pretty
but
good.
Acclaim,
But Acclaim, you were like, oh, those are pretty
yeah,
bad.
those are just complete cash-ins. Like Acclaim, LJN. Oh,
Like I was leery of Double Dragon 2 because Acclaim did the first one was published by Trade West, and then Double Dragon 2 for whatever reason was published by Acclaim. But my cousin was like, "No, it's gonna be good because it's Double Dragon." I was like,
oh,
"All right," and it ended up
yeah, that
being
one was
good.
really good. But oh my gosh, Total
But
Recall.
but Acclaim,
It was
yeah.
so bad, and it's like, I don't know. It's been probably a good like 30 years since I played it, but it almost makes me want to play it again now talking about it just to experience how bad it was. It's just one of those games that we'd play, and because we loved the movie so much, we played it. I don't know if we were like that was a justification to play it, but oh my gosh, it was terrible. The graphics are pretty terrible. But the jacked version of Arnold in that was hilarious too, with the towel on his head.
Oh man,
I
that's
just can't
great.
believe
Now
cats jumping on you. The
what's that?
cats.
The Catch of Fun.
Ugh, it was terrible.
I know that they had talked about making a sequel. This is some interesting stuff. They had talked about making a sequel to the 1990 Total Recall back in the day because it did really well. One of the sequel ideas was that Cronenberg had done a bunch of work on Total Recall before he abandoned the project when it was in that 42 rewrites of
Oof.
Limbo era. But there was a bunch of cool stuff he had done, and that may have been a springboard for a sequel. One of the other sequel ideas that's interesting, and they talk about this on the 4K disc, is that they had optioned the right to Minority Report, the Philip K. Dick story. And in the screenplay treatment for Total Recall 2, it was not even a screenplay, it was like a long plot treatment. They were going to do it based on Minority Report, but instead of the precogs, they were going to be the alien people from Mars were going to be the precogs, and then Quaid was going to be the main character. And so basically, they were loosely using the plot of Minority Report, as a sequel to Total Recall. I think that could have worked. I think they could still maybe even pull that off
They could, but
now, but Arnold's too old to do it.
yeah.
um, it would have been interesting to see either way. And then I never saw it. I'm gonna be petty Uh, I never wanted and or did go see the Colin Farrell
Oh,
2014, I
oh,
think, Total Recall reboot. I mean, just looking at I don't know, I just looked at it and I said, "No, man, you don't remake good
I
movies." Like there
no,
was no
not at all.
so in my opinion, there was no reason to even do
No,
that.
I mean, I guess I didn't. I watched maybe 10 minutes of it, and I couldn't get through it. It was on, I want to say HBO or Stars one a while back after like year after it first came out, and I'm like, oh, I'll give it a shot because I love the original and didn't hear good things about it, but I couldn't make it more than like 10 minutes through it. It was, uh, I guess that one hews more closely to Dick's book than this one, but
See, they say I watched a video. They say that, but not really, because in the Colin Farrell one, he doesn't even go to Mars. So, um, really, as somebody I watched a video where a guy dissected both, and he said the 1990 film bears more of a close resemblance to Philip K. Dick's story than the 2014 remake, even though both kind of veer off at a
yeah,
point. He said the soul of the story is captured intact in the 1990
that
film.
was my only reason for
So,
trying to watch the 2014 one was because I heard that it was more closely towards the book, but I was like, ugh, just
yeah, I guess
wasn't it. It was terrible.
s- the screenwriter of that version said that, and then he was kind of called out for not actually.
Ugh. Yeah, that was bad. There's You don't have to feel bad about hating on that because it was bad.
Oh, I don't. It's not even hate. I just was like, no, that didn't need to be remade. Like, I'm not gonna watch that. Like, so, on a side note, like what I think deserves to be remade, and not because Arnold's version was bad, but only because Arnold's version wasn't based on the true story and character, would be Conan the Barbarian. The original Robert E. Howard Conan books are a lot more interesting than what the movie was. The movie was amazing,
Oh
Conan
yeah,
the Barbarian, when it came out. The production design, the music, Arnold. It was a cool movie, but it's not the real Conan the Barbarian from the books. Like not even close. Like not close one bit. Like maybe in sort of looks, but Conan in the books is a lot more clever. Um, it's a totally different animal. I think that should have been remade. They tried to do it with Jason Momoa, and they didn't do the books either. They basically remade the '82 movie, but couldn't even do that.
yeah.
So
That's one I haven't rewatched either. Is the remake of that because that didn't look like anything I'd want to watch. But yeah, like um the Arnold Conan, like you said, was good. Not much like the book, but it was a good movie, and it was
it was a good movie,
yeah.
though. It was still a great movie. It just wasn't the real Conan. But anyway, well, cool, man. You got any last words on Total Recall, or why should somebody uh, watch Total Recall?
Because it's a classic Arnold movie. No, um,
I mean,
that is
that's
a
a
good
good
reason.
reason.
I mean, if you love Arnold, you should definitely watch it, and you've probably already watched it. But if not, it's a great sci-fi movie that holds up. It's got great action, it's got great special effects, and it has a plot. If you care to even follow it, that's really good, and it makes you think, which isn't typical for an Arnold movie. It, like I said, there are a couple parts in it which, for me, uh, can make you think either way it's a dream or not a dream. And there's not too many movies now that actually, or sci-fi action movies that actually are a little cerebral like that are worth watching. That are even probably I don't even think there's really too many movies that are made like that. It's I don't know. It's to me it's just a classic late '80s, early '90s action flick that actually has some brain behind it. It's very well done. That's I know it's just hard to describe, but it's a great movie. And if you're a sci-fi fan, it's definitely one you have to watch. It's definitely a must-watch movie, and easily one of Arnold's best.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. It's one of his best. It's a classic science fiction film. Um, I mean, it did a lot of things that everybody it was influenced by. The Matrix was definitely influenced by it. I mean, Philip K. Dick himself, a lot of his stories have just his ideas have permeated science fiction to the point where sometimes it's hard to tell uh was it not a Philip K. Dick idea when you watch a
Yeah.
science fiction movie nowadays? But that was one of the originals, and yeah, the direction by Verhoeven, the music, the Jerry Goldsmith music is great. The effects, the new 4K release looks amazing. So if you're out there and you have a nice 4K set, grab the 4K version.
Yeah,
It's really good.
it's not
I
too
would say
expensive, and
it's
it's like
definitely.
$15 at Target for the 4K one. I mean,
Yeah, I got it at the same price at
yeah.
Best Buy.
So it's
Yep.
not like an expensive dip into the 4K pond.
Yeah, man. Well, awesome. Thanks for joining me today, B Daddy. This has been a
Yeah,
ton of fun.
definitely was a pleasure. I always enjoy talking to you.
Yeah. Again, I want to thank our hosts at Ruminations Radio Network. Make sure you check out ruminationsradionetwork.com. We have lots of podcasts. There's some great shows and great topics going on. We'll be coming at you soon again from the Retro Futurist Culture Podcast. We're going to have some episodes coming up. I want to do one on Back to the Future with a special guest. That's going to be coming up soon. And maybe a couple other things. But anyway, peace out, everybody. Have a great day.